Troop Smooch and the Dog Show. Another new episode is coming up tonight.
It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show.
You're listening to the one and only Dawgs Show. Your hosts, Troop Brinson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
Yes. Welcome, dog fans, to the one and only Dawgs Show with Troop and Smooch. Smooch in a haze of cigar smoke.
Aromatic cigar smoke.
Oh, nice. That was beautiful. I like your intro. That was you through the curtains there.
My
Smooch.
effect, yeah.
We trust you folks had a wonderful Easter. Smooch is decompressing just a bit after just a, who knows what goes on behind the scenes in Smooch's world.
I know, and you don't want to know. That's
He got through it and recovered probably the last couple of days.
yeah.
Yeah, and we're all about football again. We got an NFL draft this week. We got a lot of transfer portal news, some other stuff on Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett. I will, before we really get started, thank all you fans for everything so far. I also want to, if you're just listening to this on one of our platforms, audio, you can please check out YouTube. Probably our best version of the show on YouTube. You can see all the bells and whistles in the video and the stuff we put up. But anyway, that's up to you. We invite you to do that and chime in, talk a little, some comments back and forth. That's always good stuff.
Yeah.
But Smooch, you ready to get rolling? And man, the temperature's starting to warm up now, and we're headed into summer. But there's a lot of stuff going on this week in football.
Yeah, this spring game kind of gets you stirs you up and gets you all hungry for football again. Luckily, the way it worked out this year, we're right in the middle of the transfer portal, which I'm not a huge transfer portal fan, but I do love having stuff to talk about. So that's the one thing it really has done. It is exciting. And so it's an exciting time with the transfer portal. And then we got some dogs in the draft coming up. Here, Thursday night is the NFL draft. And so, yeah, just something to watch those DGDs go out there and stake a claim to their career and continue to dominate the pro level of the sport.
Yes, sir. Transfer portal does close this week, the 25th. Right. April 25th.
Friday, yeah.
Yes. And the Dogs have done pretty well. We kind of got an inkling from Coach Smart. It seems like a few months ago, I can't remember the exact conversation interview, but it's just he's fully into this world now where you just are going to have to embrace it. And we've seen it. And the players he's retained and the players he's had brought in, I think it's been a net gain.
I would agree.
Yeah, and a lot of schools, when you got so much talent like Georgia has, you expect to lose some really good players. And so we brace for that. We really have been braced for some guy to jumping in the portal and us losing that. We're like, we really don't want to lose this guy. You don't know if it usually hinges on either playing time or now a package, a salary or money kind of a thing. But it's been good for Georgia. Georgia's shored up some of their areas of weakness. Now, I guess the biggest loss they had was an early loss when Damon Wilson decided to leave. And where did he end up? Missouri? Yeah, something like that.
The highest bidder.
The highest bidder. They identified a player they had to have, and that was a shocker. But after that, it's kind of made sense. The players that have left, you understand, and nobody's really bemoaning that because the players Georgia has brought in are definitely look to help Georgia very soon.
Yeah, Troop, if you break it down to its simplest form, now, of course, there are many other caveats and factors because this is a very complicated time in football, but you essentially have players leaving because they're not going to get a chance to play at Georgia. So reason would tell you that these players coming in are going to get a chance to play because these are premium players. So when you said net gain, that is all you can ascertain from the fact that these studs, which you're talking two of the latest three, are absolute studs coming in. They could have probably gone to whatever school they wanted and chose Georgia. So they're not coming in to ride the pine. They're coming in to contribute. So net gain is what that would imply, Drew Brinson.
Yeah, and we're going to go through these names, and I think we have it all. And not, you guys can let us know in the comments, and we'll correct it. But just this week, we called it right. Nitro Tuggle in the portal. He's going to, let's see, Purdue. So that's where Nitro is going to end up. And Purdue has been quite the pipeline. Listen to the players from Georgia in the past 2 years ending up at Purdue.
Let's hear it.
Nitro Tuggle and Michael Jackson III, who also hit the portal after 1 year with Georgia at Purdue this year. That follows up last season, them getting Purdue getting Denylin Morissette, C.J. Smith, who we really liked.
I like C.J. Smith.
Nyland Green, another player we liked, and C.J. Madden. So 6 players in the past 2 years. Yeah, they're loading up on Georgia Bulldogs. Good for them.
We call them Little Georgia over there. That's not bad.
Makers.
I think that for Michael Jackson, it makes perfect sense. I like his skill set. He's just not going to crack the field here. He's just not. And at the lower competition that Purdue plays, he should be able to showcase. And Nitro is going to be as good as he wants to be. Troop. I'm just not sure how good he wants to be. I mean, to be very candid. So.
We don't know. We don't know yet. And we mentioned Michael Jackson III going, and that's kind of what I thought when Branch, not to that degree, when Branch committed to Georgia, Zachariah Branch from USC, and he had accolades and had stats, and you knew he was a kind of an electric player, but so was Michael Jackson at times. But he came over here and just kind of got just got washed out a little bit because there's so much talent, and you have to do so much so quickly to make a name for yourself to see time. And he looked good in the last spring game, did Michael Jackson III. We didn't see him hardly at all during the season. And so I don't think that's going to look. When I watched the spring game, I could tell that Zachariah Branch was different. He moves differently.
Oh my gosh,
he's a guy a little differently. But here's the names, Smooch. We did have a couple entered this week. Chris Peel, also a backup defensive back who probably get spot time, playing time. So that's a depth piece that Georgia's going to lose. They also lost Luke Bennett, Stetson's younger brother.
The wide receiver.
Yep. And the other player who kind of got tied in for different reasons. He had a issue, I guess a driving issue, but not speeding, not really. Marcus Easley, offensive lineman. He hit the portal this week. Georgia also lost Branson Robinson. And I didn't know out of the two Robinsons, Branson was the one I thought had the best skill set. But did you realize he's a 4th-year player already?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
He was a freshman in that last national championship season.
Yeah, he scored two touchdowns, right? He came in late and ate it up in that national championship. Yeah, it's really injuries have really stolen his career at Georgia.
Yeah, so they lost them, and then of course Julian Humphrey was a player that they lost. He right after the season, actually before the SEC championship, he caught a lot of flack for the timing of that.
Yeah, he never has fit in with Kirby's system. He's just, some people just don't strike you as a dog, and Humphrey's always been that guy. It's the second or third time he entered the portal, right? It's been more than once.
Yeah, it was more than once. Yeah. Those are the players we lost. And so if you look at it, like I said, Damon Wilson, maybe Chris Peel, players who would have been playing.
I like Chris Peel a lot.
Yeah, but they have so much. Georgia has so much depth back there, and they recruit so well. You won't notice it. It won't be a drop off on the field because he was a depth piece.
Right.
And okay, here's who Georgia has brought in, and I'll tell you who the two players that I think are the jewels of this transfer portal coming into the Dogs. And let's see. Let's look at, of course, the Branch brothers, Zachariah and Zion Branch, both players who are going to play.
And it looks like both Branch brothers are going to be contributors from what we're seeing and what we're hearing. It's not just the Zachariah show. We found something in the defensive backfield as well, Troop Brinson.
He looked very good. After hearing a lot about him from spring practice, he looked the part and had some big hits. He was all over the field during the spring game. So those two brothers and Adrian Maddox, another defensive back who is a depth piece, kind of like what Chris Peel is, but he might play too. And then, and before then, one of the biggest pieces, Noah Thomas at wide receiver, a big-bodied wide receiver, 6'5"
Yeah.
And so he's another player. Then this week we cleaned up pretty well, Smooch. Josh Horton, a defensive lineman. Joshua McCray, a running back.
Mm-hmm.
And then Elo Modozie, an edge rusher, which is a serious position of need. And Georgia addressed some of those at wide receiver with Zach Branch and Noah Thomas, and then at edge rusher, especially with Modozie.
Yeah. We've seen the new toys at receiver already, and we saw them at the spring game, and they're as advertised. Real excited for Noah Thomas, that type of target, and his athleticism is insane at that speed. He's not a lumbering half tight end, half receiver possession guy. No, he's a big play type of receiver that runs really good routes. He's going to do really well. And Zachariah Branch is impossible to keep him off the field. But yeah, what we've got coming in now, I thought, well, we can start with Horton because he maybe is the least splashy of these last three. So Joshua Horton, I remember him out of he's out of Langston Hughes in Fairburn, Georgia. I remember him coming up because he's a Georgia guy. He in high school, 6'4" or so, and already up to 290, 295. Here's a crazy stat about him, Troop. His senior year, he had 123 tackles from the defensive tackle position.
That's a lot. Oh, my goodness.
That's a lot of tackles from the end. I wrote in my notes about him, really nice swat move, good swim move, creates negative plays, changes directions better than you would think. In college, he's only played in 8 games in 2 seasons.
Is he the one with the wingspan?
He's got a wingspan of 82 inches, which, they're always measuring arms. When you talk about wingspan, that's fingertip to fingertip. 82 inches, which if you watch MMA, that would give him a longer reach than John Bones Jones, the greatest MMA fighter that's ever existed, has. That is a lot of man, so to speak. But he's only played in 8 games in 2 seasons. He's battled injuries. He was offered by Trey Scott out of high school, so Georgia saw the value in him. Anyway, he's probably going to be a D end, not a tackle in Kirby's system. The tackles are a little bigger, but he's going to be one of those edge setting D ends, and he's going to be a fine rotational piece. Georgia loves to rotate, and that's what he's going to do. I don't look for him to start and have 10 sacks or anything like that. Yeah. But I look for him to set the edge, which, by the way, we couldn't do consistently last year. And just to be a rotational piece. It's just like having that 6th man in basketball. You cannot have a drop-off when you pull a guy off the bench and put him in the game. That's going to be his job.
Yeah, he'll have to come in and earn his time on the field. Mm-hmm. But he does have the skill sets and the size that Georgia that's a prerequisite. And so Georgia identified him and brought him in.
Yeah, I really like his size, especially at DN. A 295 DN, that's good. So you can't. What did I say? You can't teach speed and you can't teach size. So he's got size and he's got length.
Well, Switch, we talked about, and we've already kind of, I guess, with Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas, people know who they are. They've been on the team enough to get through the spring practice, and spring game. So we're excited about both of those guys. But one of the players we're really excited about just signed this week, and that's Modozie.
Oh my!
Tell us about Elo.
Yeah, so he's got two years of eligibility left. So this may even be a 2-year pickup in the portal. It's possible. He's out of Jacksonville, Florida. He's 6'3", 250 pounds, which that doesn't sound like a freak athlete, but that's everything we're hearing is freak athlete. 34 tackles, 6.5 sacks last year, and a pass defended, that type of thing, which are fine numbers. But listen to this. He is the number 2 overall ranked player by 247 in the transfer portal, only behind Nico, which I find interesting because we were talking about this in the pre-show, Troop. Modozie is a top tier player because of what he's done in college so far. Nico is a top tier player because of the potential he showed back in high school. One of them's done it on the field and one of them hasn't. I'll take the one that's done it on the field. That's just my take. Modozie's a freak athlete, 6'3" wide receiver coming out of high school.
Wide receiver.
Wide receiver.
I mean, he couldn't have weighed much over 200 pounds.
I think he was 203 his senior year of high school. He's now 250.
How do you do that and retain athleticism? I don't know. Wow.
That's a lot of them. A lot of those West Point push-ups, I guess.
That's the other part of the equation, Smooch, is not just the traits and what he's done on the field. It's where he's coming from.
Character, Troop. Character and being a dog and being able to take it. You're going to West Point. You have already proven that you got dog in you if you're even there. Not to mention starting for them for the Army Black Knights. So you're going to see him in that Nolan Smith, Chaz Chambliss kind of role. Got a great array of pass moves, and I don't want to knock Chaz Chambliss. We love Chaz. We even defended him a good bit on this show, but nowhere near the explosiveness, the quickness, the fast, and this motor that he's. You remember Jorge Pickens throwing the Georgia Tech player into the wall? If Georgia has a player that's going to throw a Tech player into the wall, it will be Modozie. So we need that. We need that nastiness on the team. So yeah, I was trying to think how in the world, when they come out with the transfer, here's the transfer portal, here's the top ranked players. You see Modozie at it, and Georgia's all over him from the beginning, right? Like, where did he pop on the radar? And then I went back, I started watching game film, and he's good, right? But get this. Army played Notre Dame last year. And Notre Dame destroyed Army. But there was one player for the Black Knights that was the best player on the field when he was out there, and it was Modozie, and he made some stellar plays in that. And in scouting that game, the Notre Dame game, preparing for that playoff game, that Kirby saw this kid play, and that's the reason they went all in on him. And this is a huge pickup on defense in the portal. I'm trying to think if we've had any other that were quite as paradigm shifting portal pickups as this one. And I can't really think of any. I mean, of course, Tyke Smith was a transfer. It went, we couldn't have, he helped immensely, but it's a huge get, Troop.
Yeah, hopefully so. It's just because such a position of need. And after you lose Damon Wilson in the earlier portal, and then, of course, in the draft, you're going to lose. You got Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams, both guys who played a lot on the edges. And so Georgia, I think they would have found ways to mitigate their weakness, but this is just more of a natural fit. You just hope that like I said, it is a perfect fit on paper, and from what we've read, hopefully it translates to the field, and we'll see how he fits in.
Yeah, who his NFL comp is? Azeez Ojulari.
Nice.
That's his NFL comp. We're familiar with his work. Yes,
we are. And so you talked about in this portal, this I guess spring portal, he was the number 2 recruit in that portal behind Nico. And there's some news. Nico, of course, did sign with UCLA, and man, there's so many crazy things going on with that, because obviously he was motivated for, I would say, the wrong reasons and short-sightedness. And it doesn't look like he's going to get any of that.
Right.
And when you look at, he's getting less money, he's going to have more state taxes, a lot more state taxes, as Tennessee has 0 income tax on that, and California is pretty high. And then move on and talk about the team he's going to be playing with, and the offense. It's a new offense. Everything is not set up for him to thrive.
Right.
Now, he could maybe the switch flips and something happens and he puts up offensive numbers just to put up offensive numbers. Might be a lot of empty numbers. I don't know. We haven't seen him. Well, he's done that, I guess, against some teams, but it's not set up for him to have a big year with a big spotlight like he would have had this year. And the other thing going on with that, there's 2 things really. His brother, who just committed a couple months ago to Arkansas, now pulled out of that. Now he's likely going to end up at UCLA as well.
I heard that.
His brother, another quarterback.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that is the player that's leaving UCLA, Joey Aguilar, is committed to Tennessee. So Tennessee's trying to find a quarterback. They got Merklinger, I think, from Savannah Christian. I think that's where he played.
He did.
It's a Savannah school in Georgia. and Georgia recruited him somewhat. But he's not a guy who moves the needle. I don't think he's one of those guys that
he's a poor man's Jake Fromm.
On a good day. Good. When he gets, maybe he can contribute and be a good player when he's put in the time and he's ready. I just don't think he's ready for that. And so you got Joey Aguilar coming in who in the past 2 years at App State, that's where he was before he had moved to UCLA. But at App State, he threw for, his last year, under 56% completion percentage, and he's thrown 24 picks in 2 seasons. He's a little bit more mobile, but it's not. Tennessee will convince themselves that they had identified him, and he was one of their first choices coming in. I'm sure
you're not the DFA Kings for nothing, guys.
At this point, you really can't account for losing a player who you've invested so much in, like Nico. You can't. There's no replacing. Even if he had the same season he had last year. Which throwing for 200 yards a game,
average,
it's hard to account for that and what he meant to the system, the time he put in there, because it was his third year. It's been his third year. He's been in the system a couple of years, and so there's really no mitigating the disaster that when you lose a player like that you build everything around. And this is Josh Heupel's time to shine again. Apparently, we said it. When
time to coach. Yeah.
When Hendon Hooker left, we said, if Josh Heupel is really that good, Joe Milton's going to step right in, and he's going to put up Hendon Hooker numbers, and that offense is going to keep churning. That didn't happen. They haven't had that offense, that really great offense, since Hendon Hooker left. So when we called it out, we told him you had great college wide receivers. You had a quarterback who was pretty dang good on a college level.
Yeah,
and will maximize his skill set that last year. And so Heupel had the right players in place. And so if it's just players, it's one or the other. If you're that much of a difference maker as a coordinator or a coach, then you do it with lesser players, and he hasn't been able to do that.
Yeah, the clock strikes midnight on gimmick schemes. That's just what happens. And you want to talk the difference between coaches? We all know Kirby's the best, but I'm going to tell you how much better Kirby is than Heupel. Last year, Kirby had the best coaching performance of his life and an off year. Think about Georgia's season last year. That was considered an off year for Kirby. That is, last year's season would be a dream for a Tennessee Vol to have, and that was Kirby's off year, where he had to coach through roster deficiencies and problems at the most important position on the field that we had no idea of at the time, and he coached right through it and put a good product on the field. That's the difference. Heupel has not yet shown the ability to lift a team above their on-paper value.
Yeah. You did mention that Georgia did have some issues at quarterback last year. It's funny that we just saw this week. A lot of you folks have been on social media, saw it as well. That it wasn't an interview. It was a friend standing around with a camera phone just recording a conversation.
Kai Trump. It was Kai Trump. Yeah.
Kai Trump. Yeah. And the Cavender twins, one of those, the ex-girlfriend, of course, of Carson Beck. And they had some interesting stuff to say about him, and neither of them liked him.
No.
And they were like, well, nobody likes him. You take him somewhere, and he just stuck to his phone, and he's trying to get selfies with – he's asking pretty much for selfies and for autographs, and he's just not a fun dude out. Nobody – and he doesn't have friends is what she said. And
yeah.
And that might be just sour grapes from a relationship ending after a year, but it kind of rang true a lot.
Well, we know that after he was injured in the SEC title game, he abandoned the team. He wasn't putting in the skull practice with the other players like he could have been. He could have been living with Gunner, getting him ready for the next game, and he wasn't. So we know that some of that has to be true. The thing she said that was the most telling, if you watch that, which is just girls at a bar talking, but is that she would apologize to fans for him. Like, she would be like, I'm so sorry, and make excuses for him and apologize for him because he had this elitist type of thing that just kind of pushed people away. And all that said, I want the guy to do so well. I just don't think he's going to. So when we're predicting him to fall flat or Miami to have a tough year, that's not what we want. It's just where I see this headed. This is it is proving how good of a coach Kirby actually was last year as you watch this onion continue to be peeled layer after layer.
Yeah, and I would say that he could have a big offensive year at Miami, but I just don't know if Miami's set up for him to do that. And not if the offensive line is suspect.
He is not Cam Ward either.
Yeah, he's not as mobile. He's not going to make those plays, those off-platform type plays where things break down. He's just not. And, he's just an odd dude, just a different dude, and we could see that. But when he put up the numbers he did in 2023 with all those skill players around him that he needed and everything was just right, man, we thought that he was going to be that dude.
Yeah.
But that got to his head. For whatever reason, he was not able to handle that properly in the offseason, and you saw it. You saw it a lot. He had some good moments. He really did. But he just never was a fit for this team. And the players let you know that indirectly by the way they've embraced Gunnar Stockton, right?
Yeah, 100%. We always talk about it. You can look like you're poised to take the next step, but whether or not you do, that's not always a given. Carson Beck looked as poised to take the next step, was a Heisman favorite at one point going into the season.
Yes.
Looked as poised as you can be to take the next step. And he fell flat. That happens sometimes. It just does. It stinks. They're not always going to be, we saw Brock Bowers his freshman year, and we're like, what if he takes the next step? And then he did, and we went and hung 65 on TCU in the national championship game, right? Yeah. Those types of things, not everybody takes the next step. He just didn't take it.
Yeah, and we were spoiled a bit because it was the freshness in our memory was what Stetson Bennett did. And Stetson Bennett had this fight and claw for everything, and then when
still does apparently.
Yeah, when he going into that 2023 season or 2022 season, when he had a full season to prepare, he attacked it the right way, and he came in there and just went absolutely bonkers. And we had a conversation, and specifically me on Twitter, about they were talking, I think, about the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks, and some Georgia fan was messing around and put Stetson on there, and it was with Tebow, and there's a couple other big time quarterbacks, I guess, Burrow, but that rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way. And I think that I don't think Stetson Bennett's one of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time in college football. I don't.
No.
But he's really good. He's really good. And so the back and forth with that was what I got involved with just a little bit. And I just tagged on. There was one fan that I guess I targeted after he said that Stetson was just Georgia won for other reasons. He was just a game manager.
Oh, those are fighting words.
And I was like, okay, I understand how you can say that when you look at how strong Georgia was on a lot of areas of their team, and they were. But you had to watch and go through that season, and you had to go through Stetson's career to know that was not in his DNA. No. To just dink and dunk and protect the football and just run the ball. His personality, that's not a game manager. You may if you just look at raw stats, you may say, well, in his junior season, or I guess it was his first senior season, if you want to be right. Yeah. And in 2022, he didn't throw for a ton of yards. He didn't really need to. He kind of shared some time with Daniels during that year. But in his senior season, he really, really went off when he had full control of the offense. But he was always held back. The coaches would tell you, we got to rein him in.
That's not a game manager, by the way. That's a gunslinger.
He's a gunslinger trying to do what's best for the team. But when it got down to the fourth quarter of games that really matter, you saw Stetson Bennett, who had the charisma was there. There was nothing that he didn't think he could do. Complete confidence. You saw him make passes and make plays with his feet that normal quarterbacks don't make. And so
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and we saw that. So that was the argument, and they was like, "Well, dude, Stetson never had 30 touchdowns. He's got to be a game manager." I'm like, "That's just an arbitrary number that you came out with." Georgia got a complete team. When Stetson was at his best, we didn't have to feed the ball to Brock Bowers. Mm-hmm. We didn't. It was plenty of games, big games. We had 2 or 3 catches. He was not a difference maker,
of course.
But Stetson was the difference maker. Even on Dog Nation Daily, I heard Brandon Adams downplaying what Stetson meant to those teams. I'm like, you're kidding me, because that Georgia had to have a quarterback like that.
Yeah.
You can say that they had wide receivers, they had a stable of running backs, they had defensive line. You can say all that. That one player who was making a difference, who Georgia needed to have control and to do the things he did in late in games. That when you're talking about elimination games in the playoffs and national championship games, was Stetson Bennett.
I think of 2 or 3 times. I think of the Auburn game where Georgia really hadn't done anything on offense. It was kind of a stagnant game. It was getting close, and Stetson broke that huge run, a TD run. It was a pass play. He takes off. He goes, 65 yards, I believe, for the touchdown that put Georgia in control of that game. They never gave it back up. I think about the Alabama game in the national championship. Go to about halfway point of the third quarter and let it play to the end if you want to see a, quote, game manager out there slinging the ball. And then, look, think about this. How many players put themselves in a position where the last game of their career is the biggest game that there is to play? He put himself in that position against TCU. He came out onto the field that night. They won 65-7, and Stetson Bennett tied what was thought to be an untiable touchdown number set by Joe Burrow for most touchdowns in a national championship game. Stetson tied it, and he came out early to get a curtain call. He could have stayed in and blown that, beaten it by 2, because Georgia kept scoring after they took Stetson out. So the idea of game manager, no. The biggest games of his career, he was the best player on the field, not named Brock.
And he also threw for over 4,100 yards his last season.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So there's that too, and 275 a game. So whatever that means, against Ohio State and against Alabama in the second half, no conscience, none at all. He just he was gonna put the game on his shoulders, and credit to him, he did that. So we're always gonna stick up for Stetson.
Yes,
because we saw the full career of him and where he came from and what he had to do to get out there. And once, he had played with a chip on his shoulder and was handed absolutely nothing. Even the coaching staff at some points where we heard it, but through back channels that the coaching staff was saying, he's not going to be, he's probably never going to be the number one starter here at Georgia. And this was the year that they won the first championship. Right. They were saying that, probably, but then JT Daniels he wasn't giving them exactly what Stetson was. And Georgia chose to go with the player that they could count on for those things, those intangibles.
Stetson took that job from JT Daniels. He took it away at practice. You know how hard that is to do when you're into a season?
Yeah, those players who get dinged up and just you can't get them back on the field are different than the players that you can't get off the field.
That's right.
So, coaches notice that. That's why coaches make a lot of decisions that we aren't privy to. And we have players who are fans who will see a player get in there in the fourth quarter of a game and do a couple things, do a couple flash plays, and they're just like their hands up, like, "What are you doing? What are you doing, Bobo?" Or I'm like, these guys, these coaches want to win first of all, and they watch these players every day of practice. They see everything they put in. They see them in the weight room. They know what they're made of at that point where games starting to matter. And coaches want to win. Coaches are, especially Georgia staff, they are geared to win at all costs.
Yep.
And they know these players way better than we do. Not that you can't have an opinion and you can't question it, but I always, even if I'm scratching my head sometimes, I'll say, okay, it was the right call to go with Stetson.
Look,
you guys did it.
they got it right. They're a touch better at this than we are.
And it was so undervalued. We kept hearing this. And this was what I didn't like, because when JT Daniels was healthy, he looked great. He had some games where I'm like, this is the dude. This is what we need. And they kept saying, well, Stetson's mobile. He's got legs. I'm like, don't make a choice on that. We need a guy who can deliver the ball.
Right.
Who can put up big numbers through the air. But going back and looking, some of the plays that Stetson made with his feet are very underrated. In big games and games where it didn't turn out to be big or close games because Stetson made sure it wasn't close. There's some games against Tennessee where Stetson used his feet to just totally change that game early, where a close game turned into a Georgia rout. Yeah. And gave Tennessee no air, no oxygen whatsoever.
You had me at destroying Tennessee. You're on my Mount Rushmore forever when you destroy Tennessee every time you step on the field. So yeah. No, he's a legend, and he is, not named Brock and not named Herschel. He's the best Georgia player that's ever existed. That's the simple fact. Yeah.
He's right there. And look at the accolades. And I guess part of the other argument that I didn't engage in was, of course, Georgia fans were like, well, how many MVPs does he have? Every playoff game. every playoff game he was a part of.
Every
MVP.
postseason game. Yeah.
That's just a team offensive award. That's just. I'm like, how name that happening anywhere else?
Yeah,
where they just gave it to the quarterback multiple times when he wasn't the best player on the field. That's just come on. We're not buying that.
No.
Anyway, I just thought I'd touch on that. It kind of bled into it, talking about Carson Beck and Nico and all that, and then remembering what we talked about on Twitter. NFL draft, Smooch.
Oh, Thursday night. Yeah.
What should we? Is Georgia going to get a few players drafted early? You think?
Yeah, Jalen Walker is. I believe at this point he's the only one going to the draft. I may be wrong. I don't usually follow that part of it because I hate that green room and the one kid that gets left in there.
They're already talking him down though. You know how it gets when some of the people puts out stuff.
Once they put you up, they start pulling you right back down.
He does it because they want him to fall. So they got a chance at it at a player that they have targeted. And so I heard him say he doesn't really have superior traits. Like,
okay,
for that position. I'm like, that's going
to be a tough sell.
I saw that in a couple places, and sometimes you start saying things and somebody else picks it up and they run with it. But a lot of those things are put out at this point to try to get a player to drop a spot or two, just to put a question in people's minds.
Yeah, I don't know what the over-under is for number of players in the first round at Georgia. I can tell you this. It's always something you don't expect. There's always one Georgia player drafted much higher than we thought, and then someone like Darnell Washington fall into round 4? Something like that. Absurd. That'll happen, but I think Michael – and I think
Malachi,
Michael, and Jalen are going to be drafted high.
The fun thing to watch is going to be how the NFL treats their offensive linemen, because they have some superior traits. And once they got measured and looked at some of the flash play, looked at what they're capable of doing, these teams are starting to covet those top players coming from Georgia too. That never hurts. Right. And Georgia's history and putting really good offensive line in the past few years definitely that goes in their favor. Yeah. And so I want to see how those offensive linemen are treated with Tate Radledge and Jared Wilson and who else? We got a couple more.
Did you say Jared Wilson? You just said Jared Wilson. Tate. Yeah. Let's see.
Fairchild.
Dylan Fairchild. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if Xavier Truss will be drafted, but
he has that
size wise.
He'll get a 6 or 7. Let's remember Georgia had a cat drafted in the 6th round that made the Pro Bowl that year. San Diego. I'm drawing a blank on his name. He started left tackle for Georgia and left guard.
Sawyer.
Jamie Sawyer. Yeah. And I think that you could see Truss find his way in. He's going to play for somebody. But whether or not he gets his name called that night, that'll be something we'll be rooting for on the third day, to hear his name.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great chance. Georgia's got 10 plus. They can put right up there. They had 14 a few years ago. They will be right close to that again. You just never know. Some of those guys in the late rounds, somebody takes a flyer on because they're from Georgia, and everybody will let you know that it's different playing at Georgia in terms of preparation and being ready to be a professional. And these coaches, especially at that time, they want professionals who will come in there and fight for it. And Georgia's proven to do that. So it'll be fun to watch. We've even kicked around about possibly having a little live stream and maybe for the first few picks and see how that goes. We just pay attention. We may do that.
Yeah. We're going to look into it, see if we can get our schedules right. But yeah, we're talking about going live just doing a little watch party with you guys during the NFL draft Thursday night. Hope to pull that together. If not, we still love you. But
we'll definitely have a post party at some point where we talk about all the guys, Georgia, because it is pretty much a free advertisement for Georgia football.
It really is.
And it may matter less now with NIL and the money being so up front, but it still plays a part. Because a lot of these players, some of these things are so close. Some of the offers that they get and the money so close that they have to make a decision based on where I want to play and what the preparation is going to look like. And then you got players in the transfer portal who come based on that same reputation. Right. And Georgia's getting some of those with Branch and Modozie and Noah Thomas. You don't get those guys. You got to pay for them, yes, but also being a team that's notably puts players in the NFL who are pro ready. And they already got that. You have a prestige about that now coming from Georgia, and that's Kirby Smart, and that's what this coaching staff has done for us Georgia fans and for these Georgia players. We can't wait. The NFL draft kind of snuck up on me. I didn't realize it was this week till I think yesterday.
Yeah, it did. It snuck right. Usually it's around my anniversary, which my anniversary was last week. So, but with Easter where it was, I didn't know there was anything on the other side of this past Sunday. So here we are. So I'm ready now.
So I guess that's what we're looking at, and we'll have some post NFL draft analysis and talk. We'll see what other fans are talking about. We really need to dive down, I guess, or pay a little bit more attention. It catches my attention every once in a while recently with what fans say and give us a little content. But it's going to be a lot of talk after this and after the draft. And we'll have bragging rights, and other teams will try to say some stuff. And we can always talk more about, again, for different reasons now, Tennessee and Florida. We're definitely looking forward to that. Alabama might get back on our radar. We'll see.
This is right about This is right about the time, because Florida has some momentum. This is right about the time it all comes crashing down. So be on the lookout for that. I can't wait. We're really due for a Florida flop right now, just for something horrible to happen, or some fight to happen on campus, or somebody to leave. We're right there. This is where Florida falls apart all the time.
Well, when they won 8 games this past year, which is better than the 6 games they've been winning. Yes. And they have expectations finally. This is the first year. They always talk it up. And I heard them say something really weird this week that and this was I think Keith Napier, what is his name? He came from, I think it was at Auburn for a while as a one of their reporters. But he's saying that Florida may have the best stable of running backs in the, I'm going to say SEC. Okay. But he is touting their running back group. I think they're fine running backs, no big time difference makers. But this is when they start touting all that and they start building themselves up. And I think with the expectation, maybe this is for the next podcast. I think with the expectation that they have, and with the spotlight on Lagway and some of those skill players, I don't know, they're going to have some guys step forward. We may see one of those seasons where you're like, okay, you're not winning these close games now. Yeah. You're back down to the 6-7 win range because they got a tough schedule. And they could improve.
They have a murderous schedule. Yeah.
They can improve and still lose more games than they did last year.
That's a good point.
And so we'll be following that. And we're going to, we like it when Florida at least thinks they're good. And we will have a good time with that. Because we already know Georgia, even if they have a tougher game this year against Florida, we don't know that. They might not. They might be a 30
hope so.
point.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Then we'll get them at least involved more, because in the past few years, which they've been learning more to make fun of themselves, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, that they took that, but maybe not this year. We'll welcome them back into the conversation, as Tennessee has been back in the conversation for a couple of years. Maybe Tennessee takes that step back this year, back into that mid range. So.
Poor guys. Yeah. And, it's weird. I thought at this point I might get sick of Tennessee misery. It just never stops being beautiful and wonderful to watch. I'm here for every bit of it. Absolutely.
Thank you, fans. And thank you, Josh Heupel.
Yes. Thank you, Josh Heupel.
All right. We'll be back to talk about the draft. If not on draft night, then afterwards. It's been nice getting back on the air and talking about transfer portal. We're basically done with that now. And, we got through that. Anyway, we'll close this one out for Smooch Moncrief. This is Troop Britson saying so long. We'll talk to you soon.
This is the Dog Show with Troop and Smooch.
It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show.
You are too stuck up your stupid butt heads to say anything relative the truth or smart, apparently.